Hi, everyone. Welcome to the quick hits of how to optimize your pipelines, best practices, tips, and tricks. My name is Robert Henderson, and I'm the integration support engineer here at QuickBase. What that basically means is anytime that there's a pipeline escalation, a difficult case, it gets brought up to me. And I also work as the liaison between the pipeline development team and the care team. So make sure that every case gets supported correctly. The key takeaways from this presentation are going to be the more optimized your pipeline, the better it will run. And loops are one of the largest opportunities to optimize. And to start thinking about not only building your pipelines to work with your databases, but also thinking about your databases to work with your pipelines. We're going to go over this with three separate sections: designing databases for pipelines, exploring the differences between lookups and queries, and what it means to be in or out of the loop. First section is designing databases for pipelines. So please take a look at this application. How would you make this into a pipeline? Let's assume that you want a new record to be created in the receipt logs whenever a work order is completed. Here we can see the diagram of how the app is set up. This is a simple, not optimized way of doing this. And let's go over it together. When a record is updated and finished, it'll create the trigger in A. After the trigger happens, it'll search for the related locations in step B. And then from there, it'll look at the related districts from the locations in step C. Once it has all of that information, it'll finally create a new record over in step D. Now, step C, all we are doing here is looking up the record ID by the record ID for the record ID. This information is actually already in the previous child record, so there's really no need to look this up. However, by that same logic, why are we looking it up on step B as well? The only reason why we are looking up anything in this table is to find information for the next table. Look at the lineage again. If we have a lookup field that goes all the way down from district, all the way down to work orders through the lineage, that will give us all the information that we need without having to do any lookups. Thus, we can make this much more efficient just by adding in a new lookup field. That will bring your pipeline looking from the left with all those steps and loops to a very simple, elegant pipeline to the right. The less time your pipeline is spent taking a look through your app over and over and over again, the more efficient it's going to run, the faster it's going to run. That's exactly what we're here for. Here in section 2, we're going to look at the differences between a lookup and a query. Lookups and queries both do a very similar role in pipelines, but there are some key differences that makes them each uniquely important in different ways. Here we see an example of both a lookup and a query. One of the nice things about a query is that it can search based off of any field and can return multiple results. But the downside to this is it is more resource intensive. And after you get what you want, all of that data is formatted. It's assuming that it's going to return multiple. So you need to either use a loop to get that information out or write specific Jinja expressions to target very specific examples from it. A lookup is much faster in terms of performance. It takes pipelines less time to do a lookup versus query. It is also easier to set up. Once you have it, You don't have to do anything special with it. You just get all the information that you need. The downside to this is in the QuickBase channel, you can only look up records off the record ID, even if that is not your key field. Also, it can also return only one result. So in general, lookups are going to be the more efficient way to do it if you only need one record and you know the record ID of it. If there's anything else more complicated than that, then you unfortunately have to use a query. Section 3, in or out of the loop. Just looking at these two very simple and very related pipelines, what's more efficient? What's more powerful? Well, by having a lookup inside of the query like this, you could look up any information depending on what the search results are. So if the search results are returning 10 different items, each of those lookups can be off of information off of each individual item that it returns. Doing it this way, and you have a lot more options as to what information gets looked up, but also this lookup will happen every time the loop goes through. Alternatively, if there's only one item that you have to look up and you're going to be applying that lookup to all of the information that gets searched in loop, then this is more restrictive, but because you only have to look it up once, it's a lot better for performance-wise. So ideally, if you have the opportunity, you want to be able to look it up just once and then run your loops. If you do need to have a lookup every single time, be mindful that that's going to impact your performance. That's going to take more step runs, and your pipeline is going to be slower, and any app that the pipeline's hitting might run slower as well. So to once again revisit the key takeaways, the more optimized your pipeline, the better it will run. The better it runs, the faster your pipeline will finish, as well as the less time it loops around and keeps querying your app over and over again. That will also make the impact to your app less as well, so your app can run faster too. Loops are one of the largest opportunities for you to optimize. Any changes you make to a loop will be massive compared to just a change before or after a loop. So start thinking about not only building your pipelines to work with your databases, but also your databases to work with your pipelines. That can make both run much more efficiently. Thank you for joining me.